Hello and welcome back to On Point HQ, and today a little bit of a ramble about the newly released Bolt Action Career book. Now I'm not going to talk about the whole book in its entirety, as that would clearly make for an overly long and painfully dull video. It's a Friday, nobody needs that kind of thing when there are things to be painted and wine to be drunk, but I digress. What I thought I would do would be to pick 5 things from the book that caught my attention when I read through it yesterday. Have a bit of a chat about those instead. Definitely a more comfortable format than going through the entire book. So let's crack on. First up is the scenarios, 17 of them to be precise, and they are really very interesting. As you would expect, all of the scenarios relate to some part of the Korean War, but with a bit of historical jiggery-pokery, it could easily be adapted for use in World War II bolt action. One of my favourites from the scenarios is Comrade Ivan Needs Your Help, where a downed Russian pilot has to be located. The communist forces need to find and escort Ivan from the tabletop, and the UN side, their aim is to also find Ivan and escort him away for a bit of a debrief. What I like about this mission is that Ivan gets his own dice and can fight back rather than just be a static objective. That's a nice little addition, that. The UN must defeat him in close combat before he can be escorted away. The game is played with an infantry focused 750 points list with a few restrictions on choices to keep it playable, but this looks like a fun little scenario that can easily be adapted for Bolt Action World War II. Next up is the addition of helicopters for the US, UN and British lists. Now helicopters are chosen when you opt to take a forward observation team for your chosen list. You pay an additional number of points for the variable use of the helicopters in different roles. Reconnaissance, to spot hidden troops. Observation, to allow forward observers to directly see any unit on the table. And lastly is Medevac, which increases the effective range of your medic from 6 inches to 18 inches. I should probably point out these abilities are dependent on dice being rolled to activate their use, and if you have spectacularly crappy dice rolling like me, you may have second thoughts about the use of helicopters. But I do like this rule, and it gives me an excuse to go and build a helicopter model, which I haven't done since about 1991. Yes. Third option is the addition of the seasoned NCO option. This is an additional unit, and it's a veteran NCO that can be accompanied by a further 2 men and represents that grizzled NCO that has seen it all and is tough as old boots. Now the special ability of the seasoned NCO is that he can increase the rank of any officer by 1 as long as he's within 6 inches of that officer. So the example given in the book is that a second lieutenant acts as a first lieutenant when the grizzled NCO is within 6 inches. Another really kind of cool ability is that if your officer is killed during the game, your seasoned NCO assumes command and will in effect be a first lieutenant for the rest of the game. This is a great addition to the options of the list, and again could also be potentially house ruled into World War II bolt action. My fourth interesting point is a section all about fighting in cities, and I have a sneaking suspicion that these rules will be expanded on greatly when wargames released a Stalingrad book that Alessio and Paul spoke about in the recent video. Without going into every detail, the section covers elements such as moving and shooting in rubble, with some really very gnarly to hit modifiers being applied for shooting at targets who are holed up in rubble. There's also additional rules for tanks and vehicles moving over and through rubble, with the danger that your super heavy tank that makes up a quarter of your list ending up crashing into a sewer or a cellar and being out of the game for good. Good luck with that one, comrade. There's also a rule that allows outflanking units to arrive from the sewers, which basically means emerging from anywhere on the tabletop. That's going to be quite surprising, and will give a lot of tactical consideration. If your opponent does have outflanking units, you're not going to really know where they're going to show up from. Clearly this is limited to infantry only, as seeing a Pershing tank suddenly emerge from a sewer is pushing the boundaries of reality to a pretty hefty degree. There's also an optional rule that both players must agree to that represents a breakdown of command control in city fighting, where At the end of the turn, one unit from each side stays on down or ambush. If there are no units with these orders, the opposing player chooses an enemy unit and assigns it a down or ambush order, and that dice is not returned to the bag. This continues for the rest of the game and means that over time each player will have less and less units to choose from as the game progresses. This represents the chaotic and unforgiving nature of city fighting, with units being pinned down by snipers, booby traps, uncertainty of the terrain, or unable to move or not receiving orders to advance and attack. Now this rule won't be to everyone's taste, but I think it adds a real tactical edge and simulates an urban confrontation. Now the last, fifth point is one that I'm not too keen on, and I think I'm being really petty with this one. Now it's an option paid for by points, and it's limited to one unit and isn't mandatory, so there's no requirement to take this, but the effect it confers is one that I don't like in my gaming. Now this is flak jackets that provide a 5+ save against HE and small arms fire. These can be taken by US Marine Corps sections from 1951 onwards for 5 points per man. Like I mentioned before, now I think I'm being really petty here, but I don't like saving throws in my historical games. Yes, it's limited to one unit and doesn't have to be taken, but if I run my US Marines in Korea, I won't be taking them. What I like about bolt action is that when you're hit, and there's a good chance of you not getting up again without rolling any saving dice. It has its place in other gaming systems for sure, don't get me wrong, but I don't like it in my historical games. But that's just me, that's just my personal opinion from an old gaming curmudgeon, I would probably put it. Overall though, the Korea supplement looks like it's been a great way to expand bolt action outside of World War II, and I'm already plotting what project will be my first army for Korea. I'd highly recommend the book, as the new lists, the scenarios and the new rules will certainly add a new dimension to what is already a very good game to play. Well, I hope I didn't ramble on too much, and if you have a copy of the Korea book, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions of it. I've touched upon only 5 things here and I've barely scratched the surface. There are many aspects of the book that could have been discussed, and I think it's going to be a really popular supplement moving forward. You've got new units, new nations, the addition of new tanks, new vehicles. It's going to really expand the bolt action game, and I for one am really looking forward to it. But as always, thanks for watching, take care, may your dice roll well, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Bye bye for now.